So let's talk for a second just about the realities of being a streamer, being a YouTuber, how you can expect your revenue to come in, and the way that you have to end up operating to survive on these platforms. Because if you don't do everything right, then you'll just get buried. And I have plenty of friends who have tried to be streamers and they can't make it work because they're not willing to do the one thing that you need to do if you're going to be a streamer, and that's, well, simply diversify your content. I mean it. Literally, the most important thing you can do is diversify your content and diversify your revenue. You need to be pulling in from multiple different revenue streams, or you will not survive. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Reason number one, YouTube is not going to pay you a living wage. Unless you are in the like 100,000 subscriber area, for the most part, YouTube on its own will not be paying you a living wage. Since I'm recording this, I probably can't show the exact numbers that YouTube pays me, but YouTubers have this thing called RPM, which is basically the money that you make from advertisements per 1,000 views. So right now, my RPM is about $6, and that means for every 1,000 views on a YouTube video, I make around $6-ish. That doesn't equate to a whole lot of money, and even if I had a higher RPM, say my RPM was 20, that's a lot of money per 1,000 views. Almost no YouTuber gets $20 per 1,000 views. But then you run into the other issue, how many views are you actually getting on a video? Let's say it takes you a month to make a really standout video, and the video goes viral. It gets 300,000 views. That's great. That makes you a big chunk of money. 300,000 views, that could earn you a couple $1,000s for the entire month. Did you spend any money on making that video? Did you hire any voice actors for your content? Did you pay for any licensing for music or for backgrounds? Did you pay for the Adobe suite? How much money did you sink into making that video? Moreover, how much time did you sink into it? Were you working 3 to 4 hours a day, or were you working it like it was a normal 9 to 5 while also working your normal 9 to 5? Eventually, you start to see that that nice big chunk of money really isn't representative of the amount of work that went into making that chunk of money. And this is just kind of how a lot of creative industries are. So what do you do to combat that? Well, unfortunately, the only thing you can do to combat that is, and it's going to suck hearing this, you have to work more. And I'm not meaning work more as in make more videos, make more content. Hell, I do roughly 2 videos a day, and that makes me feel dried up on its own. I'm not saying do that. What I'm saying to do, if you want to do YouTube full-time, is you need to get into streaming as well if you're not large enough to sustain off of your own content. If your content per video is not making hundreds of thousands of views, you need to diversify your content. Go on to Twitch, go on to other platforms, and make content there as well. You have to earn money on those platforms if you are to survive, and there really is no way around that. There's a handful of really good animators on YouTube who have to stream on top of their animation content because despite every video they make going viral, they still don't make enough to survive when you factor in the amount of hours that goes into any single one animation. So, but that's not enough. It's really not. Let's say that you're on Twitch and on YouTube. You're making $1,000 some odd on Twitch, which is completely subject to the generosity of the people who are watching you. And let's say that you are making around that on YouTube, which is completely subject to the algorithm and the advertisers willing to work with your channel. If you have those two things going for you, that's great. That's not enough. I hate to tell you this, but you need no less, if you can help it, no less than 4 different types of revenue if you are going to be a content creator in order to survive. You want the money that's coming in from your advertisers on YouTube. You want money that comes in from Twitch. And then you also need to factor in, you're going to need to open up a Patreon. I know that there's some people who are like, I don't want to beg for money on Patreon. And you know what? I hear you. I completely understand. You don't really have a choice. If you are wanting to do content creation full-time, that tip jar is going to be responsible for probably all of your groceries. That's how it ended up working for me, and that's still how it ends up working for me. YouTube money basically goes into all of my bills. Twitch money basically goes into paying my artists, and what's left over is my Patreon money. But that leads a 4th one, and this is where things get a little gross. Sponsorships. Now, I know that everybody, including myself, on YouTube, on various platforms, you've heard people say things about, Raid Shadow Legends or Audible or whatever place happens to be sponsoring you. And there's a couple different ways that sponsors will reach out to you, and there's a couple different ways that they'll work with you. And it's probably a good idea to get yourself familiar with the idea that if you want to do this full time, you are going to have to take sponsorships every now and again. I take sponsorships because YouTube revenue is not guaranteed. When YouTube decides that my RPM is going from 10 to 6 in the next week, I can be making the exact same amount of views per video, and suddenly I'm making $1,500 less for the month, which most of the time means my revenue has been slashed in half. When shit like that happens, you need a way to survive. You need a way to make sure that you are going to be able to still afford paying for the things you need, paying for things you need for your channel, and supporting yourself. This is where sponsorships come in, and I know that not everybody likes thinking about them. They don't like the idea of their favorite YouTuber selling out. I mean, fuck, I don't. I don't like taking them if I don't have to. I think the only sponsorship I've taken that I've truly enjoyed was... I liked... Let me rephrase that. The only sponsorship I've taken that I've enjoyed the sponsorship itself has probably been DDLG Playground. Because DDLG Playground, they let me advertise any way that I want, but they don't really pay the bills. Let me get into that real quick. There's a couple of different ways a sponsor will work with you. One way is through what's called affiliate marketing, where a sponsor will say, hey, here's a link. If people click this link, you'll get a kickback when we use the link. Cool. That's wonderful. That means that you can keep a sponsor for years, like I have. Here's the downside. That sponsor is probably only paying you between 1 and 10% of any order that goes through. And that's only when orders go through. So you might make a couple $100 every month or two. That's going to be enough to pay for a trip to the mall or something. It'll be enough to catch up on some bills if it's necessary, but it's not going to float your boat. It's not going to keep things turning. It's going to be enough to help out, but it's all it's going to do. There's another type of sponsorship that you may end up taking, and this is mainly for streamers, but YouTube will do it sometimes as well. This is your tiered sponsorship. Your sponsorship where, based on the amount of people that sign up for the sponsorship, you'll get a certain kickback from it. So let's go ahead and talk about Raid Shadow Legends. For those who don't know, I was sponsored by Raid recently, and I was sponsored by Raid earlier this year as well. The way this sponsorship worked, and I don't know if I'm allowed to click in the review to actually see everything about how much money they were willing to throw out. I don't know how much of that is available, but we'll take the gamble. So here's how the Raid sponsorship ended up working. Play the game for 2 hours, stream with a chat command up for 4 hours, stream with a branded overlay for 4 hours, and that's enough to become eligible for payment. In order to get any payment, you needed at least 20 people signing up for Raid, and then if you got up to 120 people signing up for Raid, then that would equal to about $2,000. That is not an insubstantial amount of money, and that would certainly be enough for me to fund any extra projects I have going for my channel. I actually have a side project that money was planning on being sent towards, as well as being able to help out with any debts that accrue as a natural, act of being an adult. The problem with these sponsorships is that they require unique viewers. So let me go ahead and give you some perspective. I'm in the top 1% of Twitch. It's actually not hard to get in the top 1% of Twitch, but being in the top 1% of Twitch, I still only generally have about 120 viewers at any given time. And a lot of those are regulars, people who come in all the time. There are people in the chat right now that if you've watched a lot of my content, you've probably seen most of their names pop up over and over again in videos, because they're always here, because they're insane, and I don't know what's wrong with them. But I'm thankful for every single one of you being in here. All of y'all. This is a benefit and also a problem. It's a benefit because you, as a streamer, you want regulars, that people who come in when you turn on your stream, no matter what the time of day is, those are the people who are the backbone of your stream. But those people who are more than willing to help you out with a sponsorship when it comes in, there is a finite number of them. You have to think, of the 90 viewers we have right now, more than half of them are regulars, meaning there's only a handful of viewers who are in that are going to float in and out. Those floaters are the ones that these types of sponsorships are meant to grab, the people who are coming into your stream and who are leaving your stream at any particular rate. Those are the people that will be there for the second, third, or fourth time that a company decides to sponsor you. They're the people they're trying to grab. Your regulars are wonderful, but they're only going to be there for that first sponsorship, which is just how it tends to work. Which is why the first raid sponsorship, we just about met all of our goals, and the second raid sponsorship, we really couldn't. Now, is that the fault of any of my viewers? No, absolutely not. Raid as a company is not one that now that I'm not in the sponsorship, it's not a company that I like taking sponsorships from, because there are companies that when they throw me their game or throw me their thing, I'm like, oh shit, I love this thing. I'm perfectly willing to shill for it. And then there are some where I will have to half-ass it because my heart's just not in it. Examples of this: Plarium sent me another one of their games, Star Trek Fleet Command, and it's just as microtransaction-y as Raid is, but Fleet Command actually has the ability to exist in a space with your chat, exist in a space with the people who are watching you. This means that if they were to offer me a Star Trek Fleet Command thing again, I would take that faster than I would a Raid sponsorship, because despite them being from the same company, one of them allows me to interact with my chat. One of them allows me to interact with the people that are making my stream work, because without viewers, your stream does not work. Without viewers, your channel does not work. So, games that allow you to interact with your chat, interact with your viewers, much better than games that don't really allow for that. Games like Raid. I was more than happy to take things like the Magic Spoon sponsorship because it's a cereal that I already enjoyed before taking the sponsorship. And we have an upcoming sponsorship as well that I also enjoy because I don't like going to the grocery store that much. I don't like leaving the house. But we'll have more information on that when that one comes in. My point is, though, these types of sponsorships are very much gambles. The money is not guaranteed, and if you take this sponsorship twice, if you take it again months from the first time you take it, chances are you probably won't meet any goals with it, so you probably shouldn't work those sponsorships into your budget. The last kind of sponsorship that you might end up taking is the flat fee sponsorship, where a company says, hey, we want to sponsor one video of yours, and we'll pay you an amount of money for that. That money can range from $50 to $200, and depending on your channel size, you may want to negotiate for your worth to get more than just a couple $100s for a sponsorship, depending on what your situation is. But the fact of the matter is, that means that you've got 4 ways of supporting yourself, and even with that, sometimes we have bills that just pile up and do not get taken care of on time. And that's just the reality of being an adult with variable income. Sometimes there's fewer viewers on Twitch. Sometimes ad revenue gets slashed. Sometimes people have to pull their Patreons. And sometimes sponsorship season just dries up and you are down to 3 types of revenue instead of 4. Now I want to say the last type of revenue that everybody's going to throw out, because somebody's going to say in the comments section, hey, what about merchandise? What about merch? And you're right. Merchandise is another type of revenue that you can subsist off. But from experience, merchandise is bought very infrequently, and I've maybe made, between all of the shirts, between the body pillows and everything else, I've maybe made about $90 off of merchandise. And technically I've made less than that because some of my agreements with other artists have revenue from the merchandise sales going back to those artists in variable percentages. So really, those numbers are even lower. Aspie, thank you very much for the subscription. So for me, I'm not gonna count merchandise as revenue to rely on because it's even more irregular than sponsorships in my personal experience. Now, maybe other YouTubers have different experience with that. Maybe I'm just really bad at selling stuff. It's why I've never worked a sales position successfully in my entire life. So, who knows? Point is, if you want to be a streamer, if you want to work on YouTube, on Twitch, if your dream is to get on one of these platforms and speak your mind and go forward with all of this wonderful knowledge that you have on a niche subject that has been your special interest or that you've been hyperfixated on for months, I wholly expect you to do well. You can do it. I believe in you. But you can do it as a hobby. Because looking at YouTube and Twitch as anything other than a hobby at first is going to cause you issues. It's going to cause you issues with budgeting, and it's going to cause you issues with mental health. It's a gamble as to whether or not the algorithm will pick you up to begin with, and it's a gamble as to whether or not people will want to stick around, and it's a gamble as to whether or not the systems at play in dictating how much your life is worth on these platforms, it's a complete gamble on whether or not those will work in your favor. Sponsors might not reach out to you. Your RPM on YouTube might be low. The Twitch audience that you cultivate may be one that's not really into throwing you bits and throwing you subscriptions because you may have cultivated either a younger audience or an audience that is by nature much more frugal. There's a variety of reasons why circumstantially you may not be able to make it financially on one of these platforms. But if your goal is to try, then I want to try to make sure that everybody who's trying to do that has the tools necessary to try. And the best tool that was handed to me when I started out on this platform was when I sat down to have a conversation with another YouTuber in the middle of a hotel kitchenette area. And I was asked the question, how do you plan on diversifying your income? How do you plan on making sure that you will make enough doing this? At the time, I had 300 subscribers, and I had no way to answer that question honestly. But I was forced to figure out a way to do so. So now I want to throw that to you as well. You want to be a content creator? You want to do stuff on this platform? Go for it. I encourage you to try. I encourage you to do your best to succeed. But I also want you to have that little bit of realism that lets you know that if you want to turn this into a job one day, please, for God's sake, diversify your content and diversify your income. Because if you don't, you will find yourself drowning. I have seen streamers larger than me panic about finances because they only rely on their stream, or they're YouTubers who only rely on their YouTube channel. Everything fluctuates, but if you've got more things that are working with smaller numbers, those fluctuations hurt a little less each and every time. So, hopefully that helps some of you who want to become content creators or who are wondering how content creators make money or why they take sponsorships or any of that stuff. Hopefully this answered some of that, and if it did, awesome. But with that said, everybody, I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any more questions in the comment section below, and as always, everyone, insert end of video tagline here.